For the second time in 3 years, Jalen Hurts has outplayed Patrick Mahomes in a Super Bowl, and this time it leads to an Eagles World Championship. The Locked On Eagles postgame show coming your way.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I've been waiting to say these words for 7 years on this podcast. The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Louie DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers at FanDuel can get $150 back in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Philadelphia Eagles take it over the Kansas City Chiefs to win Super Bowl 59, their second ring in 8 years, by a score of 40-22. The second time in under a decade the Eagles have put up 40 points on one of the greatest dynasties in NFL history. And there are so many incredible storylines to get into from this game. But how do we not start with QB1, Jalen Hurts? What a special moment to finally watch Jalen Hurts have his moment. 2017, an 18-year-old freshman kid at the University of Alabama falls just short in the national championship to Deshaun Watson. 2018, in the national championship, gets benched for Tua Tagovailoa, has to watch his backup win a national title. 2020, leads Oklahoma, another school, to a college football playoff. Joe Burrow takes him down. Then he has to watch Joe Burrow beat him for the Heisman Trophy. Jalen Hurts has one of the greatest Super Bowl performances in NFL history 2 years ago. Has to watch Patrick Mahomes hoist the Lombardi Trophy. He's been knocking on the door since he was an 18-year-old kid, waiting to be a champion. And tonight, it finally happened. And what a way to do it. To prove the doubters wrong, to be the reason you won by throwing the football inside the pocket, making plays with your legs, big-time plays on third down, 3 touchdowns, under 10 incompletions, almost 300 yards from scrimmage. I mean, what more can you say? Like, it's over. The critics cannot say anything more about Jalen Hurts, who is now a Super Bowl MVP at the age of just 26. And that's what's so sweet about this for Jalen, is that for years, and I'm one of those people that I have to raise my hand, I did not think this would ever be a reality. I didn't think that Jalen Hurts could be a reason you win a championship by him being a complete quarterback, not just a mobile quarterback, but a guy that when the Kansas City Chiefs shut down your most valuable player on offense, let's be real, of 2024, Saquon Barkley, and they dare Jalen Hurts to be the reason you win this game, Jalen can be that guy and put together a near flawless performance. A performance that tops what he did in the NFC Championship. I mean, his numbers are unbelievable. Let me pull up the exact stats. Jalen Hurts finishes this game 17 of 22, 221 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception in the first half, 11 carries for 72 yards and a touchdown. So this guy almost had 300 yards from scrimmage, only 5 incompletions, 3 touchdowns, and just 1 turnover. I mean, it's over. Again, there's nothing more you can say. Jalen Hurts has now, in 3 of the biggest games of his career in the NFL, in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, in the Super Bowl this year, in the NFC Championship 2 weeks ago, he's had 3 historically great performances. Like, how cool is that to see, especially after having such a selfless season? I mean, you could say Josh Allen this, Joe Burrow that, Lamar Jackson this, Justin Herbert that, blah, blah, blah. Like, Jalen Hurts has now, in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, he has outplayed, I think, the second greatest player of all time in Patrick Mahomes. And now he has a ring before all those guys. He's a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's the greatest quarterback in franchise history for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's over. I said this after he won the NFC Championship, but now you bet your ass it's over. And now it's absolutely over. Jalen Hurts, his legacy is cemented already, and he's 4 years away from being 30 years old. I mean, what an insane story. It is the coolest part of this. And again, I got to raise my hand. Like, if you go back to my 2020 podcast, my 2021 shows on Locked On Eagles, I was so irate that this guy was an Eagle. I truly did not believe that he'd be the franchise quarterback. And there's so many people that felt that same way. It's incredible that we're here. Like the Eagles themselves drafted him to be a backup to Carson Wentz. And then they nearly traded for his replacement after 2021. They were so close to bringing in Russell Wilson or Deshaun Watson. I mean, it's insane that the Eagles were so close to all of this not being a reality. Jalen Hurts brought you a championship, your second Super Bowl in under 8 years, where, oh, by the way, you beat the two greatest players in NFL history in those two championships to get those two rings. But, like, that's how you got to feel. It's so cool, right? It's an incredible story of a player proving. I've never seen an athlete prove more people wrong, right? I mean, it's so cool to see that. But at the same time, you got to feel lucky as an Eagles fan because this wasn't plan A for Philadelphia. And there were a lot of moments where one little change completely changes the course of history for this franchise. And now Jalen Hurts has put up that second banner at the link, and we get to see that raised next year. And that's the craziest part. He's only 26 years old. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame career in the making. For him to do what he has done in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls, his win percentage is up there with the likes of Tom Brady and Peyton Manning and the greatest players of all time at the most important position in sports. I mean, he has 53 wins and less than 25 losses throughout his career. He's going to break the rushing touchdown record. He had the most rushing yards a quarterback's ever had in the Super Bowl today. I mean, it's unbelievable. I don't even know what else to say about Jalen Hurts. Again, Kansas City dared. They stacked the box every single play. They said, Saquon Barkley's not beating us. Jalen Hurts, you're going to have to be the reason. He said, cool. I'm going to only have 5 incompletions. I'm going to throw for over 220 yards, 2 touchdowns, including an explosive touchdown that put the game on ice to Devontae Smith in the second half. He had 72 yards on the ground, including a touchdown in the first half. Countless third down conversions. Third and longs, by the way. I mean, the back shoulder throw to A.J. Brown was absolutely beautiful. Another throw to Brown on the left sidelines, or I believe it was Devontae, where he's got Chris Jones, one of the best defensive linemen in NFL history, in his face, and he delivers the ball. To watch the evolution of this player that so many people didn't believe he could evolve like this. I mean, somebody's going to write a book about it one day. And how demoralizing for Carson Wentz, by the way, to have to sit on the sidelines and watch his former backup quarterback, put on the show he did today. I mean, that's what it was. It was a complete show. And again, it's so cool to see him with that Lombardi trophy, to prove the haters wrong, to get Philly their second title in under a decade, but also, again, because he's been so close to this in college, at the NFL level, and for him to show the resiliency to always bounce back from the doubt and to bounce back from a devastating Super Bowl loss 2 years ago, to bounce back from the collapse of last year. I've never seen somebody of this age with this much poise, this much resolve, this much ability to overcome adversity. He is so special in his own unique way. Yes, again, is he the style of player we're used to seeing at quarterback? Normally what we think means you're great? No, but greatness is greatness, and this is a different version of it. But also at the same time, what we saw today inside the pocket, that is what you're used to seeing from quarterbacks. You got to give him his flowers. He looked like a franchise quarterback inside the pocket in the 2 biggest games of the year, in the NFC title and the Super Bowl. But again, the mobility, the leadership, the clutch play, the ability to overcome adversity, and the moment's just never too big for this guy. I mean, that's what makes Jalen Hurts truly great. And I think that's the NFL, they're going to look themselves in the mirror when it comes to evaluating quarterbacks, what is important and what's not. I think Jalen Hurts is completely changing the game. So again, you can say all you want about Josh Allen. He's a top 3 quarterback in football. He's the MVP for a reason. Lamar Jackson, I think, is a top 5 quarterback in football. So is Joe Burrow. Jalen Hurts is the one that got his ring first. He's the one that beat Patrick Mahomes when none of these other guys could. So what more can you say? He's a top 5 quarterback in football. He's got a ring. He's 26, and he's the greatest Eagles quarterback in franchise history. And I can't believe Lou DiBiase, I'm saying this on Locked On Eagles, considering where me and this guy started on this show. But I've never been, and I said this, at least I'm going to give myself some credit here for a second. I've always said on the show, I'll never be more happy to eat crow in my entire life than if Jalen Hurts is a franchise quarterback and he wins his team a championship. He did that tonight. The Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Super Bowl 59 is in the books, 40-22 the final score. 2 championships in under a decade. And the only real consistent variable of those 2 titles is general manager Howie Roseman, who put together one of the best rosters in NFL history to stop a dynasty. We'll get into the work Howie did coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, guys, this episode of Locked On Eagles is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do. That's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. Post your job. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip as well. Add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say LinkedIn helps them find quality hires. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Oh, man, I know you guys see me. I can't stop smiling. The Eagles are Super Bowl champions. 40-22 is the final score. And again, for them to win two rings, excuse me, my voice is shot, so I apologize. I'll get better for tomorrow. For them to win 2 rings in under a decade, beating maybe the 2 greatest dynasties in NFL history, like to stop a three-peat, like that, I don't think people understand like what was at stake here with Kansas City. They were about to do something that seems virtually impossible in the NFL. Repeating is hard enough. Philly's going to have a hard enough time winning in 2025. Winning 3 in a row is incredible. To stop them is so sweet. Like winning a championship in a vacuum is great. If they would have beat Buffalo or Baltimore or Cincinnati, if they would have beat Jacksonville back in 2017, it would have felt great to party in Broad Street like I'm going to do after this show. No matter what, like a championship is a championship. Banners fly forever. But it's a little sweeter when you beat an all-time great team, an all-time great quarterback, an all-time great coach. To beat that team in the way they did today, when it was at one point 40-6, that's even sweeter. And Jalen Hurts, as I said, gets so much credit for that. What a performance from QB1, named Super Bowl MVP of this game. But Howie Roseman deserves more credit than anybody. He had one of the most flawless off seasons you'll ever see from a general manager. And it resulted in, I think, the best franchise roster the Eagles have ever seen. And I think you can make the argument, this is one of the most talented teams in NFL history. And you saw that on display today. And the greatest team on paper, that team doesn't always win the game. A lot of the times, and it's why the Patriots have won so many championships, the Chiefs, a lot of the times the greatest quarterback and head coach in the game, they're the ones that win the game. The best roster doesn't always win. But this team, it was just too good for even, I think, the best play caller and quarterback combo in NFL history to overcome. They just overwhelmed Kansas City with talent. Of course, on offense, we saw how good Devontae Smith was today and A.J. Brown, both scoring touchdowns. Saquon Barkley still had over 80 yards from scrimmage. The offensive line, I think, figured it out in the second half. But when you look at the defense, too, the defense finally, unlike past years, there's no Band-Aids. There's no guys you're winning with, not because of. Howie Roseman learned from his mistakes. He said, I'm going to draft defensive backs early in the draft. I'm going to finally invest in great schools. I'm just going to keep it simple. For all of Howie's creativity, I think one of the best things he did in creating a championship team was keep it simple, stupid. I'm going to take the best players from the best schools. I'm going to take Nolan Smith from Georgia, Jalen Carter from Georgia, Jordan Davis from Georgia, Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts from Alabama. Right? I mean, he just took players from incredible schools. And you saw that talent up front today. And you saw him learn from his mistakes of ignoring defensive back. Cooper DeJean falls to him in the second round, gets a pick 6 today. On his birthday, his first career pick. I mean, how cool is that? Quinyon Mitchell with a hit stick in the end zone. shut down Xavier Worthy on a deep ball on the left sidelines. The Chiefs had no vertical game in the first 3 quarters until the game was all but wrapped up. You look at Zach Baun with a diving interception. It's, as Jason Kelsey once said at a Super Bowl parade in downtown Philly, and that's going to happen again next week, it's the whole team. It's the whole team, because he also continued to invest in the trenches. I mean, that defensive line, what they did today, 6 sacks on 0 blitzes. Josh Sweat with 2.5 sacks. Milton Williams with 2 sacks. They're going to get paid. I don't know if they're going to be back next year after those performances. My God. Jordan Davis gets a sack. Jalen Hunt gets half a sack. They pulled their best impression of what the 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers did to Kansas City in the Super Bowl. They had Mahomes running for his life the whole time. But this time, there wasn't any slow corners or safeties or linebackers to take advantage of. No. Howie Roseman built a flawless roster. I mean, even Oren Burks. Look at all the role players. It's the whole team. It's not just the top-end star talent that won this team a championship, but the depth. Oren Burks made big plays today. He was not a liability in coverage whatsoever. Moro Ajomo had a tackle for a loss. Avonte Maddox comes in the game on a big spot. I mean, the coaches, you got to give the coaches credit too, Nick Sirianni and all the assisting staff as well. They have all these guys ready to play. Avonte Maddox doesn't play all game. It's a 4th down in a big spot. He's one-on-one with DeAndre Hopkins in the slot. Boom, pass deflection, pretty much ended the game. I mean, you look at other guys too. Jalen Hunt gets half a sack. Jordan Davis gets a sack. All the role players that stepped up today too. I mean, Jahan Dotson, 2 catches for 42 yards today, 2 explosive receptions. He hasn't touched the ball pretty much all year. It's very hard probably to stay engaged in these games when he's not touching the football. Unlike Quez Watkins 2 years ago, his number was called twice today, and he came through. And I said that on the show earlier this week. If Dotson's number is called, he's going to pull it off. He did it. Brandon Graham. Oh, man, I'm going to get emotional if I talk about Brandon Graham too much. But BG got a bunch of pressures. For him to go out on top at year 15, he thinks that he's going to miss the entire year after that torn tricep injury. And he's going to retire like that. For him to make it back just in time in his last game of his career is the Super Bowl, and they win it for the player that's been here for 15 years. I was 13 years old when Brandon Graham was drafted. He's been with me for every era of Eagles football that I was a coherent fan. To see him go out on top like that, the Eagle that's played more in this uniform than anybody in franchise history, and for him to actually make an impact with that kind of injury for a defensive lineman, there are so many incredible stories to this because Howie Roseman built such a good team that there are so many stories. I mean, even like the Georgia guys. Jordan Davis gets a big sack. Jalen Carter was dominant all game. Nolan Smith was being tackled because he was getting to the quarterback so consistently. Howie Roseman deserves a gold jacket. For him to win 2 titles in under a decade against the 2 best dynasties in NFL history with different quarterbacks and head coaches, to do it the first time with a backup quarterback, to do it this time with, yes, Jalen Hurts was the MVP, but to do it with a running back leading the way the majority of the season. I mean, talk about writing a book. I said somebody should write a book about Jalen Hurts. Somebody's got to write a book about the career arc of Howie Roseman. And the great part about this team versus the 2017 Super Bowl team is that this one's not going away. This window is wide open. And I don't want to use this word, the D word, but I'm going to say it. There could be. There's only one ring, and it takes 2 or 3 for this to be real. But this has the potential to create a dynasty for the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to get into that as we wrap up our Super Bowl postgame show right here on Locked On Eagles. This Super Bowl recap of the Locked On Eagles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off the NBA action, it's now just getting started. There's no better place to get in on that than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on, the fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in on the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. Right now, new FanDuel customers can bet $150 in bonus bets. So that's what you're going to get back if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets with that first $5 bet winning. I don't know if I would bet that on the Philadelphia 76ers, but Luka Doncic is, I think, re-energizing LeBron James. I've been taking the Lakers a lot lately. I won big on FanDuel because of that Austin Reeves 40-point performance. So again, whether it's the Lakers, the Sixers, you're a Celtics guy, you name it, bet $5 on the NBA, and if you win, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, everybody, I hope you're out there partying in the streets of Philadelphia on Broad Street. If you're in Philly, if not, if you're across the globe, thanks so much for tuning in to Locked On Eagles and making us your first listen each and every day. I really never knew if we were going to be able to do this show. I mean, I took over for Locked On Eagles right after they won the Super Bowl. I have dreamed of being able to do this show, this moment, where I could recap a Super Bowl win, and that's exactly what we're doing today. The final score, 40-22. Philadelphia dethrones the Kansas City Chiefs. They stop a historic team from doing something historically great, winning 3 straight Super Bowls. That would have been the best dynasty in NFL history. I mean, look away, the New England Patriots or the Pittsburgh Steelers, the San Francisco 49ers, all the all-time great dynasties. Like, step aside. The Chiefs, if they won 3 straight, it's over. The Eagles stopped something historic today. And I do think, again, this is getting ahead of myself, they got to win at least 2 to start a dynasty. But the Eagles' window is wide open. They could absolutely become a Chiefs-like team where Jalen Hurts, Nick Sirianni, this era of Eagles football, the golden era of Eagles football, they raise multiple banners. Like, just think about it. As I said, Jalen Hurts is only 26 years old. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are locked up long-term. They're in the primes of their career. Saquon Barkley is locked up for multiple years. The entire offensive line, outside of Mekhi Becton, who they got to pay, I want him back. 4/5 of the offensive line is locked up long-term. You look at the defense. The defense now, that's finally where the window is blown wide open, as opposed to after they won the Super Bowl in 2017. I mean, basically the entire defensive line, outside of Milton Williams and Josh Sweat, and they were incredible today. Josh Sweat, I actually thought he should win Super Bowl MVP at one point of this game before Jalen Hurts really blew the doors open and started scoring and just dominating. There was a point where I thought Josh Sweat was going to win it. He had 6 tackles, I think like 4 or 5 pressures on third down, 2.5 sacks. He was great against the run. Josh Sweat was a man possessed today. So was Milton Williams. Like, they'll probably get paid elsewhere. Hopefully Philly can keep at least one of them. But outside of that, like, again, Nolan Smith, rookie contract. Jalen Carter, for now, rookie contract. Moro Ijoma, rookie contract. Jordan Davis, rookie contract. Jalix Hunt, there's a theme here, rookie contract. Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean locked up for 3-4 more years. Same with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Reed Blankenship. They're locked up. Zach Bond, if you can get Zach Bond paid, this defense isn't going anywhere. And that's the most exciting part about this is after 2017, like, that was the oldest roster in football. You look at even 2022, the offense you knew was going to be there long term, but the defense had a lot of expiring contracts, a lot of age, like Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham, and you didn't know if TJ Edwards was going to be back or CGJ. James Bradbury and Darius Slay were older players. There were question marks about both of those title teams, or at least teams that got to the Super Bowl, if the window was going to stay open. This one, there's no doubt. Like, this was not a fluke. That's the thing. That's what made 2017 so special, was that it was such a surprise, and it came out of nowhere, it felt like, that year. Nobody thought they were Super Bowl contenders. I certainly didn't think that when Carson Wentz got hurt and Nick Foles took over. It was just a Cinderella story that you were just riding the high of. But this team, they were supposed to be here, and they got the job done. Like, they cemented the legacy. This was the greatest Eagles team of all time. And thank God they won a ring, because if not, there would have been a lot of what could have been 2 losses in 3 years to the Chiefs. You're starting to get into early 2000s territory where this all-time great team just couldn't do it, but they got it done. And the window's wide open. They can do it again. Like, this team was supposed to be here, and they're supposed to be there next year, and the year after, and the year after. This is a much bigger window of potential sustained success than the 2017 Eagles had after that. And a lot of that's because, again, you have, I think, the most unfairly criticized elite, historically paced head coach and quarterback combo in Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni. Those guys aren't going anywhere, and that's the most important part of a dynasty. But again, look at the roster. Look at the roster Howie Roseman built. You're going to lose some players. You're not going to keep both Milton and Sweat. Hopefully you keep Zach Bond, but you might not keep Mekhi Becton. But the vast majority of this roster is coming back next year. And the vast majority of this roster dominated today. I mean, who had a bad game? Everybody contributed. Literally everybody. Even on special teams. A lot of the backups made big-time plays. I mean, like I said, Avonte Maddox just comes in cold turkey on a fourth down one-on-one with one of the greatest receivers of this era, DeAndre Hopkins, and forces the incompletion. So the most exciting part about today's championship is it feels like they're just getting started, right? I mean, you never know, and that's why I said this week, like, you got to finish. You got to finish now. You never know when you're going to get back here. The NFL stands for not for long for a reason. But now that they won it, you think about the possibilities long term. You stop the dynasty just like you did in 2017. Maybe you can form one of your own. Like, maybe this is a Cavs-Warriors type of thing where this is the Super Bowl that we're going to see year after year after year. That's an exciting prospect. But for now, you just got to enjoy this championship because, again, you never know. I really thought after 2017 we'd be back here quick. And it wasn't that long. I mean, it only took 5 more years. So other sports or fans of other teams would probably roll their eyes and want to hit me if they heard me say that. But that core, they never got back. The majority of that core, at least. So this one, you got to enjoy because they got it done. And it's not easy to do what they did today against an all-time great team, to put up 40 points against a Spags defense that's really good, to completely shut down, I think, the second greatest player of all time, who only has 6 points until the fourth quarter, with the youngest defense in football. I mean, shout out to Vic Fangio. What a job he did this year. There are so many storylines we'll talk about for the entire week and for the entire offseason. It's one of the coolest stories in NFL history. It's the greatest Eagles team in franchise history. And it's one of the most talented teams that football has ever seen. And today, the better football team won. That's not always the case, but this was very 2013-like, where Seattle, they were playing the better quarterback and Peyton Manning and a high-flying Denver Broncos offense, and they just smacked them because they had no flaws in that roster. This Eagles team is very similar, I think, to the 2013 Seahawks, where they overwhelmed Kansas City with talent. Kansas City had 1 alpha, and it felt like Philadelphia had 30. I mean, that's dramatic, but that's how good this team played today. And because of it, the confetti has fallen. Everybody's out there Broad Street partying. We're going to have a parade this week, and another giant banner is going to be raised at Lincoln Financial Field. Until tomorrow, though, I'm going to sign off the Locked On Eagles podcast. One final postgame show, 40-22, the final score. The Philadelphia Eagles, your Philadelphia Eagles, are Super Bowl champions. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen each and every day. As always, thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go, Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.